So the 2025-26 OHL regular season is just about here. It's a time of year where junior hockey fans excited to see where their favorite players end up with the National Hockey League camps, but at the same time, wanting those players to return so they can have a full season with their favorite OHLers. But the Barrie Colts, they're going to open the season this weekend against the Guelph Storm. So today, let's bring in the color commentator of the Guelph Storm, Mark Paré. And Mark, this is a Guelph Storm team that over the last few seasons, they've started off with some question marks in regards to players at NHL camp. It was Matthew Poitras a couple of years ago, last year, Jet Luchenko. And we're kind of getting that same question here. Does Luchenko stick with the Flyers or does he come back?
Yeah, it's been kind of the head scratcher and the $1 million question here in the Royal City is, if Jet Luchenko doesn't stick around, does he even come back to the Storm? Do they think about moving him to another team in the OHL? Do they feel like the Storm are ready to have Luchenko as the top billing in the lineup and feel like he's going to have that opportunity to develop the way the Flyers want him to develop? On a team that is rather young. I mean, you think about some of these guys at the National Hockey League level, they'll want maybe a Luchenko going to a contender. But if he does come back to the Storm, I mean, they would love to have him. They would definitely need him if they want to, kind of go up the ranks, if you will. But they got some pretty young players as well, and that's all they can really think about at this point in time. They can't control what they do at the NHL level, whether or not guys end up staying or going. They just have to focus on what they can control.
And this year, it just seems as though the Western Conference is going to be so tight. It's hard to say who's going to finish where. I know a lot of people talking about Kitchener, Windsor, London. They'll probably be top three, maybe Sault Ste. Marie. But after that, it's anyone's guess as to where teams are going to finish. And with this Guelph Storm team, as you mentioned, they're young, but there's a lot of hype and expectation with some of these guys.
Yeah, and you think about some of the guys that are veterans on this team. You want to see guys, take that next step up, whether it's the third or fourth year guys like Will McFadden and Parker Snellgrove, even recent Pittsburgh Penguins draft pick in Quinn Beauchene. Then you even turn to the guys that are going to be draft eligible this year, and Alex McLean, Carter Stevens, Ryland Singh is also draft eligible this upcoming year because of the late birthday. And then you dig into the guys that are new on this team in obviously Yako Isaac, we'll get into him a little bit, but also guys like Mark Pape, who was firing on all cylinders. He was a 50 goal scorer at the 15U level last season, and they're wondering if that's going to translate to the OHL level, and he can provide a little bit of that scoring touch as well. So there's a little bit of an unknown, but there is a lot of excitement with, the possibilities that can come if some of these first, second, third year guys really find that potential and can mold with a lot of these 19 and 20-year-olds that are still on the team.
And we're recording on Tuesday, and today the OHL media poll came out. And what really stood out is that a lot of the media who took part in this poll were picking Wysick as potentially being rookie of the year. I haven't seen him in person yet, but do you think the hype is legit with him?
I've had limited viewings, admittedly. I think I've seen him two or three times during the preseason here, but the hype is definitely real based on the small sample size. There was one game here in Guelph, I believe they were playing Oshawa, and he had a beautiful end-to-end rush where he ends up scoring a goal and really just if he can do that on a regular basis where he can showcase the hands, the edging, the edges, really phenomenal skater for a guy his size and a guy his age. If he can really turn that up and turn it into a successful 68 game season and do that all day long, he has a really good shot at becoming an OHL Rookie of the Year. It's one of those guys that is part of a deeper rookie class. I mean, I think about some of the guys that were drafted in that top 10 in the OHL draft. Wysick is definitely up there. There's a reason why he was picked second overall, but I really think his size really gives him that extra advantage and that extra oomph, if you will, to be a guy down the middle. And you might even see him as a top six forward on this team in the next couple of months.
And for the Guelph Storm, these last couple of seasons, the offense is an area of It's been a concern just who's going to be scoring the goals. So if you can get Wysick a season or two under his belt, we could be looking at someone who's going to be putting up quite a bit of points in the Ontario Hockey League.
I think so. And, I think about some of these other guys, and one of the big questions coming into the season for Guelph, you said it, where's the goal scoring going to be coming from? It feels like we've been saying that for quite a while. I mean, when Matthew Poitras ends up making the Boston Bruins, that was a big question mark of, where is that offense going to come from? Because he was a guy that was a setup man. I mean, he was picking apples like he was Anne of Green Gables for crying out loud. He had 81 assists in his final year before moving up to the NHL and was really a big setup guy and helped a lot with the success. And then you end up in a season where he makes the Bruins, and you have to find out, okay, who's that next diamond in the rough? Who's that next guy that's got to take that next step up? Well, it's Jet Luchenko. Sure enough, he takes that opportunity. And quite honestly, he looked like he was going to be a second round pick based on where he was at that point in time. He struggled with injuries in his first year, but he really took that role and went with it and turned himself into a 13th overall pick with the Philadelphia Flyers and parlays that into a little bit of NHL experience last season. Now is the time where you're going to find these other guys that have to take that next step up and be the next Chet Luchenko and Matthew Poitras. When I think about some of the guys and the contenders on this team that could possibly do that, I look at it, Alex McLean. He filled into that top line pretty nicely when Luchenko went to the World Juniors last season. He was putting up points by the dozens with his line mates in Lev Katzen and Charlie Paquette. Obviously, Lev is over at Penn State now, and you got to have to fill that role too. But when you have that depth down the middle, there is options for this Storm team, and if they can click very nicely, that offense is going to come. That's basically the whole end all be all of that. They need to rely on that depth, but they also need kind of that one guy to really take that next step up and solidify themselves as a top line center. I feel like that's going to be the big key in terms of trying to find the offense on this team. You're not going to find a guy like a Liam Greentree on this team. You're not going to find a guy that's probably going to go for 100, 110, 120 points. I really feel like the Storm, their strength is obviously going to be on the defensive side. They got a lot of veterans on the back end. But when it comes to goal scoring, they're going to have to rely on all four lines to get the job done.
And at the OHL trade deadline last year, George Burnett moving on from Braden Gillespie and handing over the reins to some young netminders. And we're already seeing here in the preseason that there's some potential here in goal for this Guelph Storm team.
And this goes back to a couple of years. If you recall, a couple of years ago, they had Braden Gillespie as the number one, and then it was kind of in flux on who was actually backing him up on a night-to-night basis. There were a couple of times where they were taking loans from other teams to bring in goaltenders just to sit on the bench any given night. I really feel like George Burnett saw that and said, we really got to shore up this goaltending depth. We got to start picking up some of these goaltenders earlier on and build this up for the future because Braden Gillespie isn't going to be around forever. Obviously, he's not around at this point anymore, but they've already built in that depth in Colin Ellsworth and Zach Jovanovski. The two of them are really a good 1-2 punch on this team. And, the record isn't really indicative of what their skills are. There have been a number of times last season where they had some phenomenal saves, save of the night. These are guys that are at just the beginning of their OHL careers that are really showing that promise and that poise to be in that net and take on the amount of games that are required to be a number one netminder. But this is going to be a tandem that you're probably not going to see, one guy go for 50, 55 games and then the other one take the ball. You might see an even 50-50 split and just go with the guy who's hot. And then you look beyond that, you have Cruz Resnick, who was just picked up in this most recent draft, and he's going to be developed at the junior B level this year. If one of those two go down, now you have Resnick that you can bring up as well. I really feel like George Burnett did a really good job at shoring up this goaltending position for not only now, but for the next few seasons, because you got three really quality netminders that could potentially one day be an OHL goaltender of the year.
Well, Ellsworth in the preseason, some stellar numbers. And I know it's preseason. You just got to take it with a grain of salt, but still very encouraging on that front. But a week or two ago, we did learn that the new captain of the Guelph Storm will be Charlie Paquette. And as soon as I learned it was Paquette, there was a few people I was talking to, and they said it's no surprise. This guy, a fantastic leader, and I'm sure you've seen it. What he brings to the Storm organization.
To be honest with you, last season, if Jet Luchenko wasn't getting that C, my next pick was good luck, Chuck. Without a shadow of a doubt, this guy is a leader. He's vocal, he is outspoken, and he can get it done on the ice as well. This is a guy that, speaks up when a leader needs to be speaking up. And, he is the veteran of the group now. He is an overager, one of two overagers, which is another situation that they have to figure out whether or not they want to pick up a third overager to go along with Paquette and Miedema. But, Charlie Paquette is a leader on and off the ice, and it's no surprise to me that he ends up getting the C. It did raise some suspicions and some questions on the future of Jet Luchenko, yes, but Corey Stillman was pretty adamant about it when he was interviewed about it just after the decision was made. You wanted to get the C on the guy immediately throughout the 68 game season, and there's no guarantees that Jet Luchenko is coming back from the National Hockey League. There's no guarantees he's going to be around for 50, 60, 70% of the year, even if he does come back, because he's also going to be a guy that's going to be probably going to go back to the World Juniors for Team Canada. So you want a guy that's going to be sticking around all 68 games, knock on wood, barring injury and all that. Even if he does go down, this is a guy in Charlie Paquette that is going to be very vocal and really, try to get the team to rally around him and rally around each other to be successful here in 25-26. Because the fact of the matter is they missed the playoffs about it, and they're not happy about it. They want to make the playoffs and get into the dance this year, and Charlie Paquette's going to be a big reason why they do so.
Now, I grew up in Kitchener. I was a Rangers fan growing up, but I saw the rivalry firsthand. The Storm and Kitchener, it's one of the best in the Canadian Hockey League, but now it's a whole other level right now as both Guelph and Kitchener named the finalists for the 2027 Memorial Cup. I can't imagine what it must be like for the two organizations who are so close together geographically are now fighting over the right to host this national tournament. What's the buzz like in the Royal City right now?
It's interesting to say the very least. 25 minutes door to door from the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium to the Sleeman Center. Um, it's interesting because all the talk, especially in the last couple of years, has been, oh, this is Kitchener's bid. They're going to go into it. They're going to win it. It's a given. Why bother bidding if you're any other team? Kitchener has been building their team on the ice to be this, 2027, that's going to be their peak year and the year that they want the host and win a Memorial Cup. You entering Guelph, and one of the things that I've learned from the organization here is that if it wasn't their bicentennial year, if it wasn't their 200th anniversary, they weren't going to actually place a bid. But they said, you know what, this is a great opportunity to bring in a Memorial Cup tournament and celebrate the 200th anniversary of the city. And the buzz has been interesting. There are still some skeptics around the Royal City about, Guelph versus Kitchener. Kitchener, they obviously have the bigger arena. They can fit 2,000 more people in their arena. People are just going to look at that and say automatically, well, that's more ticket sales. That's a given. Kitchener is going to get it. But Guelph has shown a lot of success in, not only being able to bring in the fans on a consistent basis. They had a record attendance a couple of years ago when it comes to average attendance for their franchise history. But they've done some upgrades at the Sleeman Center, and I'd imagine that there's going to be more to come if the bid is successful. But you think about all the surrounding parts here as well. And this is all due respect to Kitchener and their bid. Guelph has a little bit more going for them when it comes to the things that are surrounding them. They're deep in the downtown core. They have restaurants right down Macdonell, which is 2 minutes away from the front door to the Sleeman Center. There's a lot more activity around the Sleeman Center that you can take advantage of to bring in the fans to have that buzz. Yes, Kitchener's got free parking and they have a lot of it, but they're in the middle of a residential area. I really feel like that might handicap them a little bit here when it comes to the Memorial Cup bid. But Other than that, I mean, they're putting in a new restaurant at the auditorium as well. But, there's a lot of pros and cons for both of these bids. But at the end of the day, there is a lot of buzz here in Guelph that you know, we want to be Kitchener. We really want to be Kitchener at this. And, it just plays into that Highway 7 rivalry a little bit more that, bragging rights are on the line for this bid. And it's not just, the guys on the ice that are, playing the 68 games. It's the front offices, it's the management, it's the ownership that are really, putting their next foot forward and saying, we want to win this and we're going to do everything possible in order to do so. And I really feel like Guelph does have a legitimate shot to get this done. Because even when you look around, successful bids, you people will say, "Oh, Guelph, they missed the playoffs last year." Well, Kitchener was one of the best teams, and they're still going to be one of the best teams here this year. Think about Saginaw. They didn't make the
Mhm.
playoffs the year before they won the Memorial Cup. They didn't make the playoffs the year that they were named the hosts of the Memorial Cup. So just because Guelph was in the basement of the West last year doesn't mean that's going to hinder them and their chances of making this bid for the Memorial Cup successful. And you look at their history and their ability to quickly turn around from the basement to becoming champions. Winners in 2014 had a couple of off years. They win it again in 2019. Yes, they haven't won a playoff round since the pandemic, but this is kind of that turn of the junior hockey cycle, if you will, for Guelph. This is normally the time that you see Guelph kind of kick it up a notch and be contenders in the OHL. It might be a little bit longer of a step this year per se, but by the time they get to 2027, I really feel like they'll have the nucleus ready to go and ready to contend for the Memorial Cup.
Oh, the Guelph Storm, they've hosted it before in 2002. And we talked about Wysick earlier in our chat about this is his rookie season. So in 26 27, Wysick will be draft eligible for the National Hockey League. And then the team, it looks like they've got a pretty decent draft cupboard as well. So, yeah, we've talked a lot about the amenities at the odd, but Guelph's shown in the past they can host tournaments such as this, and I almost wonder too if the CHL saw Guelph and Kitchener and wanted to put them head to head just because of that whole rivalry and see what happens out of these competing bids.
I think so. I think that's exactly what they were thinking. And that's with all due respect to Kingston and Niagara, who also put in bids. And, I really feel like Kitchener and Guelph are the top two out of those four. I might be a little bit biased in saying that because I obviously cover the Guelph Storm on a regular basis. Beforehand, I was covering the Kitchener Rangers while I was working for the radio station in KW. Yes, a little bit of a bias, and people listening that might be listening from Niagara might be not too thrilled with it, and they might come after me on Sunday when I go down there. But fact of the matter is, I think they made a good choice in Kitchener and Guelph, and I think this is almost similar to the situation in goal for the Guelph Storm when you look at these two competing goaltenders trying to, you know, compete to be the number one. They're going to build each other up. And it's kind of that old saying where a high tide rises all ships. Both of these two franchises are going to raise each other up and they're going to bring each other up to that next level. And it's only going to be beneficial for both franchises. Just unfortunately, only one of them is going to be able to host the Memorial Cup. But I can assure you that the other one that ends up losing this bid, they're going to make a big run at being that second OHL team in the dance.
Well, no matter what, the rivalry is going to be even better for Highway 7 between Kitchener and Guelph going forward. But Mark Barrie, thank you very much for coming on today. And I guess I'll have to keep an eye out for you when the Sudbury Wolves are in town, since you're also helping with their broadcast with the radio side.
Oh, I'll be around. I'll be around, my friend.
So that's Guelph Storm color commentator Mark Paré. He does the Rogers TV broadcasts. And also, we mentioned it briefly there at the end, he's also the color commentator for the road radio broadcast for the Sudbury Wolves. So, Mark, one of the busy broadcasters in the Ontario Hockey League. He also does the IBL with the Kitchener Panthers, the Guelph Royals, and even for Major Series lacrosse for the Six Nations Chiefs. So, Mark, a very busy commentator, and it's always great to be able to chat with him and have him here on the channel as the 25-26 OHL season begins this week, and the Guelph Storm making their one and only visit on Saturday for the Barrie Colts home opener. So it should be an exciting one. So thank you very much for your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, Talk to you again soon.